Hello, and welcome to Unity of Huntsville from my home. The title of the talk will be Going Down a Deep, Dark Hole. But let's begin by affirming together our opening statement. There is only one presence and one power in my life and the universe, God. And I invite you now just to take a deep breath and release it. And as your breathing pattern returns to normal, bring your awareness to this moment, perhaps allowing it to focus on your breath as you breathe. As your awareness becomes present, allow your body to relax and allowing the mind to become a little more quiet and a little more still. And we open ourselves to Spirit, the teacher, as Jesus taught us, our only teacher, who's within us always and available to us. And so we open ourselves to divine guidance now, in the prayer that we will take something from the message as it's given that we need for our spiritual growth, and then just leave the rest for another time. And we are grateful for this opportunity to gather and the technology that has allowed us to gather. We are grateful for life itself. And in this gratitude we say thank you. And so it is. Amen. So the title of the talk is Going Down a Deep, Dark Hole. And I'd like to begin by relating to you a story. This happened as I was coming home from college one summer. It was probably 85 or 86. I've been thinking about it and I'm just not really sure exactly which summer it was. But a friend of mine and I had decided that we were going to go and explore a new cave. Now there was a group of about a half a dozen of us who we went cave exploring quite often. Some people call it spelunking. We usually call it just caving. But the idea is to find a new place and just explore these depths underground. Well, one member of our group had gone to the library and done some research on caves in our area and had printed off these maps of different caves. And this friend of mine and I, we had access to one of these maps. And it was a new cave that we'd never been to before, but he knew how to get there. I don't encourage this cave or exploration on your own. It can be quite dangerous, as you'll see in this story. But this particular cave is about a mile long underground. And as most of the caves in our area do, it follows an underground stream. So we got in the old GMC pickup truck that we had at that time. I believe it's like a 1968 model. And we headed out into Cateco Valley, Newsom Sinks area on the geographical survey maps. And we were headed to Lamon's Cave. We found the turn where the tractor road turns off of the main road. And at that time there was no gate, so we just turned and headed down this tractor road. A tractor road, if you don't know, is completely unimproved. It's usually just two tire marks that go along the edge of a field. So the woods are on one side, field on the other side. And it's completely unimproved. So as we went down this road, of course, we encountered mud holes and different things like that. Didn't think anything about it. We just continued on. We had to go about 2 miles down this tractor road before we came to the mouth of the cave. Well, about a mile before that, we encountered a pond on the right-hand side that was what we figured the end of the cave, because this cave, remember, follows an underground stream, and the spring where the cave ends was in a pond, according to the map that we had from the National Speleological Society. So we went on past that pond, knowing that we were on the right track now, and found the mouth of the cave. We parked the truck and went inside. It was my friend, myself, and my dog Ranger. Yes, he loved to go anywhere that I was going. So in this mouth of the cave we go, and it's a pretty simple cave. It's not a maze. There's not a lot of side passages. There's mostly just 2 levels. You follow the stream, and then eventually there's a place where the cave splits into an upper story and a lower story. And at that point, if you want to travel on foot without going literally underwater, because the first story collapses down to where it is literally right at the edge of the underground stream. You would have to wiggle through a tunnel that was all water if you wanted to continue on the first story. So we went up following flow rock, which is like a rock formation that looks like a waterfall, and we climbed up there to the second story. Now, once you get to the second level, it goes both ways, continuing to go deeper into the cave, and it also goes back in the direction we've already come. And there was several places in this cave that were named on the map, and one was called the glue room because the mud was so sticky on the rocks as you traveled that it was like glue, and you could easily step on it with your shoes and pick up your leg, and the shoe would stick to the rock. And we went through some beautiful rock formations, curtains and stalagmites and stalactites. But we didn't quite get to the back of the cave, and we decided it was time to turn around and head home. So we had with us the flashlights that we were using, and we each had a canteen of water. Well, so we turned around and we were headed back. And we kept going on. We were on this second story, and we kept going and realized that we had gone way further than we should have, that we should have encountered the place where we would go down to the first level, and we didn't get there yet. And so we turned around and we went back. And we did this several times. And all this while, my dog's getting tired, and we're getting, quite frankly, a little scared. Because our lights are becoming dim. We don't have any extra batteries, no extra flashlights, and we can't see nearly as far as we could when we first started into the cave. Our water bottles are now near the bottom, and we're really quite thirsty. And this fear that we're feeling is rapidly being picked up by my dog, and so he is not happy at all. And we continue this process of going pretty much back and forth on this second story, not able to find the place where we came up to the second story from the first story. And after we'd done this a few times, we were quite tired. Our lights were very dim. And I don't know, I think it might have been the dog who went there, but for some reason my attention was drawn to this deep, dark hole. It was an area where our flashlights weren't quite reaching. And so we had gone past it more than once. And it just struck me. Again, it was probably my dog who showed us the way down. But this was finally the place that we needed to go to follow the waterfall down to the first story. Well, once we got there, there was no problems at all. We found the mouth of the cave and got in the truck and headed out back to go home. We didn't know it, but it had rained quite heavily while we were in the cave. And we encountered one of the mud holes that was easy to get through coming in, and we got the truck stuck. because of the extra water that was in the mud hole. To make a long story short, we headed off on foot trying to find a place. This was way before cell phones. We're talking about 1985, 1986 time frame. And we were thirsty. We were tired. But we headed off across country, cutting, we knew if we followed the roads, it would take forever to get to any kind of home or anything. So we cut across country and eventually came out on Alabama Highway 67. And there were people out looking for us, and we were found. So that's pretty much the long and short of the deep, dark hole story. Now I'd like to relate for you how this is going to tie in to a spiritual lesson. I want to remind you of the verse that we read a couple of Sundays ago that's out of the Sermon on the Mount in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5. And it's verse 44. And I'll be reading from the Lambda translation. And this is Jesus' lesson on how we can handle conflict. And so he says, "But I say to you, love your enemies." And there's the first step. Love your enemies. So this situation or this person who's bringing the conflict, love this person. And bless those. Send this person, this situation, a blessing in gratitude. And then realize that the true adversary is not the person or the situation, but that which is inside of us that caused us to have this reaction to the conflict. Do the right thing. He says, do good to anyone who hates you, and pray for those who carry you by force and persecute you. So to do the right thing is the next step, followed by prayer. Sometimes it's necessary for the prayer to happen, where we make that divine connection, bringing ourselves back to center, back to our highest possible vibration, seeking guidance from Spirit, that we're able to discern what is the good thing to do in this situation. Sometimes it's obvious. So those are the 4 steps. To love the situation, a person. Bless them. Realize that the true enemy is not the person or the situation, but it's something within us. Perhaps a deep, dark hole that we're not willing to explore. Perhaps that's exactly what it is. Do the right thing. And it might take prayer, which is the 4th step, to bring us to the place where we can discern what that right thing is. As we go into this exploration process with the deep, dark hole, this is an experience that Jesus also talked about in the Gospel of John. So I want to read for you now a little passage out of the Gospel of John, chapter 3. This is the story of Nicodemus, a Pharisee who comes to visit Jesus. So he was in Jerusalem, and there was a man at that place of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a leader of the Jews. He came at night to Jesus and said to him, "Rabbi, we know that you are our teacher sent from God, for no man can do these miracles that you are doing unless God is with him." Jesus answered, saying to him, "Truly, truly," meaning from the truth I tell you, "truly, truly, I say to you, if a man is not born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." Now this saying, born again, is used in Christianity in some ways that might surprise Jesus. There's a footnote here in the Lambda translation that's right next to this born again phrase. And it says, born again in Northern Aramaic means to change one's thoughts and habits. Nicodemus spoke Southern Aramaic and hence did not understand Jesus. Born again, to change one's thoughts and habits. I can remember one time my niece asking me if we're born again, or is it once and done and we never have to do it again, or is this something we need to do over and over? And I know it wasn't the answer that our fiance wanted me to give, but I said we can be born again many times, even in the same day. Because being born again is this process of changing one's thoughts and habits. So as the thoughts drift away into this deep, dark hole, we can be born again, renewing our consciousness. And bringing life. Jesus taught us that he came to bring life. You know this word salvation that's in our translations? In the Aramaic, it's the same word as life. You know this word that's translated as resurrection? In Aramaic, that's the same word that is translated as life. And it is a life energy, a life force. Not the life we lead, the living out of life, but it's that substance that permeates through all of life and comes directly from God. This is life. That life energy. When we're aware of our divine nature, that life energy is flowing freely through us. The conflict evaporates. And it is this process of loving the situation, loving the enemy, blessing the enemy, doing the right thing, and prayer that puts us back into this flow of life, back into this centered state. I'd like to share one more passage from the Gospel of John. This is near the end of Jesus' life, and he's reviewing with his disciples what it is that they need to continue or bring into the future as he's no longer going to be with them. So this is the Gospel of John, chapter 13, and I'm going to read verses 34 and 35. A new commandment I give you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, every man shall know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. He didn't say that people would know that we are disciples because we have a certain type of dress, that we wear a certain color robe, or carry a certain item of a symbol around our neck, like a cross or a stole. No, he said, people will know that we are disciples of Jesus, that we follow his teachings, and we share those teachings by our love one for another. And isn't that the first step that he gave us in how to deal with the conflict? Even the conflict itself is our aid. It is our opportunity to see that deep, dark hole that is within us. And I have a little joke to share with you that goes around this idea of the darkness. And Halloween is coming, so we like to talk about ghosts and goblins. Why is it that monsters don't eat ghosts? Because they taste like sheet. So we're aware that these deep dark holes, they are in our life. We build them in our life without even knowing it, before we even have language, by our experience of living in these bodies. And we encounter them because they're deep and they're dark and we don't want to see them, and our flashlights are dim and we can't see them. So we encounter them by these conflicts. If we refuse to make this encounter, we get to see this conflict over and over again as we are living through our life. So going down the deep dark hole is this process of uncovering something in ourself that needs to be addressed so that we can move on, so that we can better love one another, so that we can bring ourselves more and more into the flow of life. Jesus came that we would have life, that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And so we love the enemy, the perceived enemy, which is the person or situation that brought the conflict. But our true enemy, and we bless them because they're allowing us to discover this deep, dark hole, which is our true enemy. We do the right thing in the moment, and we pray to make the divine connection, the connection to God that is always there with us. And I invite you, as you experience conflict in your ongoing living process, to consider these 4 steps. Try it out with things that are really easy, and that way as the conflicts become maybe a more difficult, you're more equipped to deal with them in the same way. Remember those steps. And if you have trouble remembering them, they are outlined in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5 and verse 44. So I'd like to close now with prayer that reminds us of that ever-present divinity within us. As expressions of God, God is always available to and through us. And this is the prayer of protection. It's written by the poet laureate of Unity, who has now made his transition, James Dillett Freeman. So let us affirm together the prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever I am, God is. Thank you for joining me this morning. And I hope that something that was in this message will be a seed for your spiritual growth. See you again next week.